want some of this. Let's roll. Ha! Ha! Ha!
Hey, what's up guys? Welcome to my complete and updated Itto guide. In today's video, you're going to learn how to play and build Itto efficiently, covering his best weapons, artifacts, teams, playstyles, combos, and just really everything you need to know about Itto. He's someone who I've been playing pretty often since he came out, as he is one of my favorite DPS characters, and his rerun banner just came out, so I believe it is the perfect time to make an updated Itto guide. Very quickly before we begin, I do want you guys to know that I stream very often on Twitch, link in the description if you're interested, and with that said, let's get right into it. Alright, so the first thing we're going to do in today's video is talk about Itto's playstyle and talents so that you can get the most out of his kit. First of all, you should know that Itto is a character who relies on normal attacking and charge stacking to dish out massive amounts of geo damage. The way this works is inside of your elemental burst, all of your normal charge and plunge attacks will be converted to this geo damage, and you'll also gain attack speed. On top of that, during every hit of your normal attack combo inside of your burst, you will gain one stack of superlative super strength, which is a stacking effect unique to Itto that gives him his own unique charge attacks. In fact, without your burst, your normal attacks would give you a stack on your second and fourth normal attack hit, and then your burst will give you another stack on your first and third, so it's on, every hit from 1 to 4. Now, to show you what these charge stacks actually do, here's Itto's normal charge stack with no stacks that you shouldn't really ever be doing, but when you actually get those stacks by normal attacking or using your skill, which we'll talk about, your Itto will do these huge AoE charge stacks and have a unique finisher at the end of your charge stack string. Because of that, there's a lot of unique and cool combos your Itto can do to maximize how many normal and charge stacks you're doing and get the most damage out of your rotation. For more details on this, I will include a more advanced combo section a little bit later in the video. But for now, what you need to know is that Itto has these unique charge stacks that do good AoE and are also geo with your burst, and so you're trying to have your burst up on cooldown as often as possible, as all of your damage really comes from being inside of your burst. This ability lasts for 11 seconds and has an 18-second cooldown, so only a bit of downtime where you're going to be on your supports and trying to get your energy back to get this 70 energy cost back on time. Something else that's very important that you should know is that inside of your burst, you actually gain an attack bonus equivalent to a percentage of your defense because of this and your passive talent that gives you another defense scaling on your charge stacks, and so you will be prioritizing building defense on your Itto over something like attack. If that wasn't enough, you also gain attack speed while doing your charge stacks, giving you up to a 30% attack speed increase from this passive talent alone, which is nice for long charge stack strings. You also gain an increase in resistance to interruption, which means you won't get knocked around as much. Moving on, your elemental skill is a really good ability that we need to talk about. It's your little pet cow, your ushi, that you can yeet at enemies and deal a surprisingly high amount of damage. This ability is honestly great for a few reasons. First of all, when you summon ushi, not only will he deal a lot of damage and give you particles, and by the way, you can gain particles from this ability even when you're inside of your burst, which is great for Itto, as someone like Shoutout doesn't gain particles from his skill inside of his burst, but Itto does, so that's really good. Ushi will also taunt opponents when he's on field, and every time Ushi takes damage, you will gain another stack of your superlative super strength, which will let you do more charge attacks in a rotation without having to weave in as many normal attacks. You can gain one stack this way every 2 seconds, and while it's hard to calculate just how good this is because it is quite random, it can give you more DPS, as charge attacking is the main focus of your Itto's kit. On top of that, you should know that you can hold this ability if you want to aim it, but in general, you're just pressing it and it's doing a ton of damage. A tip I want to give you though is to use this ability inside of your burst, unless you need to use it like to get particles when you don't have your burst, but typically saving it for once your burst is active will be efficient, as you gain a lot more damage when you use your burst. For example, here is the damage difference between using my ushi outside of my burst and then using my burst and using my ushi. The reason why you gain more damage is because Itto's burst gives you this extra like defense scaling attack bonus based on your defense, so all the defense you're building will be converted to attack and it will make you deal way more damage. Something else to know is that your normal attack combo actually does not reset after using your elemental skill or dashing. Because of that, you can basically do like one normal attack into your ushi into doing the second hit right away, as well as making dodging less punishing as you can continue your normal attack combos, and it does make Itto feel more fluid. Lastly, before moving on to Itto's builds and like optimal combos, for your talent priority, you typically want to be maxing your normal attacks first, as this increases all of your normal and charge attack damage, and then your burst, and then lastly your skill, but all three are quite good. I just crowned Ushi because I find him really cute and funny, but normal attacks are definitely your priority. Alright, now moving on, let's talk about how to actually build your Itto. Well, first of all, for the artifact sets, thankfully it's pretty straightforward. The 4-piece Husk of Opulent Dreams is a set that was pretty much made for him. This set is really good because it gives you just a ton of damage, 30% defense on the 2-piece, which he scales off of, and then the 4-piece will give you an additional bonus of up to 24% defense and 24% geo damage bonus that you get passively by stacking it by either dealing geo damage when you're on field or by just being off field. And so because of that, this set for Itto is just really good, and his best in slot overall, so you should use it if you have it. With that said, there are other alternatives that come very close, like the 4-piece bolide, which is really good because it buffs your normal and charge attack damage by a significant amount, so it's only a bit worse than the Husk of Opulent Dreams as long as you're shielded. Therefore, I would only really recommend running the 4-piece bolide if you're running Itto with a shield character like Zhongli, or if you can consistently pick up crystallized shields, although that is more difficult. Because of that, it is a good alternative, but not quite as good as Husk. Now, if you don't have those sets, another alternative can be running the 2-piece Husk for 30% defense, and another 2-piece like the 2-piece Archaic Petra being the best one, which will give you 15% geo damage bonus. Overall though, you can pick your sets based on what your best substats are, although in general, the 4-piece Husk of Opulent Dreams will be your best. Moving on, for the main stats you want on Itto, it is pretty straightforward. The first thing you need to know with a character who relies on his burst to deal damage is that you want to have enough energy recharge to spam your burst on cooldown. To give you guys a range on how much you want, it does depend on how you play Itto, what team and your rotation as always, but as you guys will see in the team comp section a bit later, you typically want to pair Itto with at least 1 or 2 other geo characters, since there's usually a lot of good synergy there, and it'll also help your Itto run on a lot less energy recharge. And so, assuming you're running Itto in an optimal team that, once again, we'll cover, you would typically want around 130 to 140 energy recharge as a good range to go for. But as always with energy recharge, you should test what works for you. With that out of the way, the other stats you're looking for are crit rate, crit damage, and defense percent on pretty much any piece that you can get them on. To go into more specifics, on your sands, you want to go for defense percent as it will give you the most damage. For your goblet, geo damage bonus is the best as it increases all of your damage. And lastly, for your circlet, you want to go for either crit rate or crit damage, whichever one you need the most. Moving on, for Itto's weapons, this is going to be a pretty straightforward section because he has some really good options for every type of player, being a great free-to-play option, a great battle pass option, and a great 5-star as well. In fact, your best weapon overall is going to be the Red Horn Stone Thresher. This is Itto's signature weapon, and it's just pretty insane for him as you get almost 90 crit damage on the stat, and then its effect will give you 28% defense and an increase to your normal and charge attack damage by 40% of your defense. Because of that, this will definitely be your best option overall if you do have it for Itto. With that said, it's not an option that you need, and you should definitely not feel forced to pull for it, as Itto has some really good other options that I'm going to cover. In fact, his second best option is going to be the Serpent Spine. This weapon is great even at R1 and will get better the more you refine it. As you may know by now, this weapon gives you a ton of crit rate and also a stacking effect that will allow your character to deal more damage the longer he's on field, and since Itto is your main DPS, you can gain these stacks passively before starting a fight or like at the start of the Abyss to make sure that it's always fully stacked, and while you can lose these stacks when you take damage, you can protect this by running a shield or picking up a crystallized one that is pretty easy to get in a Geo team. Next up on the list is actually going to be the White Blind. This is a free-to-play option and is honestly insane because it's accessible, any player can make it, and is a really good option for Itto, even out DPSing most other 5-stars. The White Blind is so good on Itto as a free-to-play option because it gives you a defense percent on the stat, and then more damage on the effect, which will increase your attack and defense every time you do a normal and charge attack, stacking up to 4 times. This effect gets better with refinement, but even at R1, it is very good. To show you guys just how good it is and to compare it to other weapons, I will include a weapon ranking on screen right now. The only other weapons I do want to talk about are the Skyward Pride and the Blackcliff Slasher, which can both be viable options. As you can see, Blackcliff Slasher, especially if you can stack it, can be pretty good, but it isn't my favorite overall. Skyward Pride, however, can be a very good option if you need the entire 36% energy recharge that its passive does give you. While it won't be as high DPS as the Serpent Spine or the Red Horn, it can be a good option to use if you have it, pretty similar in strength to the R5 White Blind. The other 5-stars on this list are viable options if you already have them leveled, but as you can see, Itto has some very accessible weapons that are really good, like the White Blind or the Serpent Spine if you buy the battle pass, so picking the right weapon for your Itto should be pretty easy. Now moving on, I want to talk about Itto's optimal combos and how to basically weave in and mix your normal attacks with your charge attacks to maximize your stacks and DPS. Now, a few things to note before I begin. First of all, in this section, I'm going to be giving you guys his basically go-to like bread and butter combos, general guidelines of what you should be doing to do good DPS on Itto. With that said though, there are many different combos that are good, and there is randomness to it as well, because you do gain a stack if Ushi gets hit, so that can change how many normals and charge attacks you want to be doing, and some of the combos can be a bit more complicated than others, so what I'm going to do is give you guys general guidelines, what you should be doing, and then for more specific combos, while I will put one on screen to give you guys an idea and show you how Itto should be played, I will link a very useful combo resource by KeqingMains in the description of this video, so shout out to them as it is well written, and will give you more information on a bit more specifics that will be difficult to cover. So with that said, let's talk about Itto's combos. Now the first thing you should know is that inside of Itto's burst, you can use your skill 2 times. Since your burst has an 11-second duration and Ushi's cooldown is only 10 seconds, you can use your burst and then use your Ushi early on and then continue your combo inside of your burst, and near the end you can use Ushi another time as he will come off cooldown. This will ensure that you're gaining the maximum amount of energy while also doing the most damage, since as we saw earlier, your burst does increase the damage of your Ushi quite significantly. Another tip is that you can weave in a normal attack before your skill, sort of animation canceling it, allowing you to get a quick stack before before using your first ushi. Something else you should know is that you can dash cancel the final hit of your charge attack combo, where your Itto sort of like plunges, if you will. You can dash cancel that to just save a bit of time, although it isn't necessary. Other important bread and butter things for Itto's optimal combos are, number one, after you use your second skill at the end of your rotation, since we're doing one skill at the start and one at the end, you can actually do a very quick charge attack right after that will utilize the stack your ushi just generated by hitting an enemy to instantly do the powerful hit of your charge attack, effectively allowing you to end your rotation with your powerful charge attack finisher. For your combos themselves, regarding how many normal attacks and charge attacks you should be doing, because that is something that's important to know, you want to typically be doing strings of either 2, 3, or 4 normal attacks. How many you do does depend though on which combo you choose to do. The last thing I want to say before I get into the exact specifics of the combo, or of one example combo rather, is that you can buffer inputs to make the combo easier to execute. What this means is you can like input whatever you want to do, like dash canceling or doing a charge attack out of a normal attack, like your third one or fourth one, to make sure that your combo is properly executed. So what this combo is involves using your burst at the start, then doing a string of 3 normal attacks where you use ushi after the first hit. So you do 1 normal attack, then ushi, then 2 more hits into a charge attack until its finisher. Then you do 4 normal attacks into another charge attack combo, then your second ushi at the end, which will combo into another charge attack that will immediately be a finisher since you're using the stack that you just gained from your ushi. While this may seem complicated at first, it's really not that hard to execute, as you can buffer inputs, and you really just need to know that you're basically just doing 3 normal attacks into a charge attack, into 4 normal attacks into another charge attack, and using 2 ushis in your rotation, 1 at the start after your first normal, 1 at the end, which you can then combo into another final charge attack. With that said though, as I mentioned a few times, there are many different combos and it is variable and flexible, but this is just a good general one that works, and there are also some more linked in the description if you are interested. Next up, to quickly talk about Itto's constellations, he's really not someone who needs them. In fact, Itto's early constellations are really not that big of a DPS increase to where I don't really think they're worth pulling for unless you just want them. For example, his first constellation will give him more stacks of his superlit of super strength throughout his burst, allowing him to do more charge attacks and less normal attacks, creating for some new combos where you can effectively just get more charge attacks off. With that said though, it's really not a big DPS increase at all, being very minimal from the testing that I've seen and not seeming to be worth the primo gems that it costs. Your second constellation will give you more energy and decrease the cooldown of your burst after you use it based on how many Geo members are in your party. Now while this may seem nice, it's not the biggest deal. The energy is the biggest part of this, so you can run less energy recharge by running other Geo characters and being able to get some energy refunded, but the burst cooldown decrease of up to 4.5 seconds is usually not relevant, as you're typically spending the downtime of Itto's burst on your other Geo characters using your support abilities and then swapping back to your Itto and using his burst once it's available. Therefore, you won't really be using this decreased cooldown all that much, so this constellation is mainly used for the energy, and it just doesn't seem that impactful, at least compared to other characters' second constellations. Next up, your C3 and 5 increase your talent levels, with C5 increasing your burst, so it is quite nice. Your fourth constellation is, again, not the best one for your Itto himself, although it can increase your team's DPS. What this constellation does is when your burst is over, it will increase all your party members' attack and defense by 20% for 10 seconds. This will therefore buff your other party members, like your Albedo or Fischl or whoever you're running. On top of just that, it can buff your Itto's damage for a second rotation, so after your first one is over and you use your second one, you can actually get this defense buff right here, but it does not help with your first burst at all, and will only buff your supports after your burst is over. Lastly, your C6 is your best one. This one is pretty nice. It will just give you more crit damage on your charge attacks, 70% more, and will give you a 50% chance to not consume a stack of superlative strength every time you do one of Itto's signature charge attacks. Because of that, you can effectively go on pretty much forever. There's a layer of randomness added to the C6, and it does seem very fun in the sense that your combos will change every single rotation because it's random, and it can make for some pretty insane strings. With that said, it is not needed by any means, but it is a significant damage increase and also has the randomness effect, which can be nice. Alright, now moving on, for one of the most important sections, we're going to talk about Itto's teams. As always in this section, I try to give you guys the best synergies and team comps for specific characters so you get the most value out of them by pairing them with other characters that can complement their kit and playstyle. For Itto, it is pretty straightforward though, because he's someone who really only wants a set of specific characters, and while the last slot is usually flexible, you typically want to pair him with usually 1 to 2 other Geo characters, with triple Geo teams in particular being very strong. The reason for this is because Itto is someone who really wants to be able to use his burst on cooldown. Because of the relatively high energy cost, and since he doesn't generate that many particles on his own, you want to pair him with other Geo characters to allow him to build more offensive stats, more crit and defense, while supporting him from off-field with, for example, Goro or Albedo, who I'll talk about very shortly, while your Itto's on-field DPSing. Because of that, triple Geo teams are very prominent, and his best supports, at least for the first 2 slots, are typically Geo characters. Goro is very good with him because Goro buffs your defense. He is basically the Itto support, and the character I would recommend pairing with Itto the most. This is because his elemental skill increases your defense when you use it, and and also has other buffs based on how many Geo characters you're running, which will give you just more overall team DPS. As you can see, you gain an additional defense bonus and Geo damage bonus based on your Goro's talent level, so be sure to level this E as high as you can. And the rest about Goro you can keep very low investment, like even if his damage is very low, just maximizing his skills talent level to buff your team, while also giving him a bow that can give your team energy like Favonius, with a supportive artifact set like the 4-piece Exile or Noblesse Oblige, already makes him an excellent support. For the third slot, if you're going for triple Geo, which I honestly typically recommend, if you have any of the 5-star Geo characters, they're very good. Albedo for particles and just passive damage is a great option, and Zhongli can be good as well for a shield that makes it to where you won't really take damage, and also decreasing the resistance of opponents while you are shielded, which does translate into more damage. On top of that, Zhongli as well can run Favonius Lance, which will give you even more energy, helping your Itto even further. The shield can be very nice, especially if you're running a weapon like Serpent Spine, where being shielded can help you preserve your stacks. Do keep in mind though that Zhongli becomes a much better support for Itto if your pillar from your elemental skill is actually hitting opponents, generating geoparticles for your Itto himself, as well as also proccing like your Millilith set and your Favonius Lance if you're running those. So definitely try to place your pillar accordingly so that it is actually helping. And for your other Geo character, your third slot, you can still run triple Geo even without a 5-star option like Albedo or Zhongli. You can use the Geo main character. Mine's on Electro right now, but the Geo one is very underrated and quite strong. And while Electro is still viable too, what's nice about the Geo main character is that they'll give you a crit rate buff through one of their constellations, nice passive damage from their pillars and burst, and can also run a supportive option like the Favonius sword if you do need more energy. For other Geo options, Ningguang can be a burst support or a Thrilling Tales user that you can swap into, but isn't as strong as the other options I mentioned. For Yunjin, I get a lot of questions about if she works with Itto, and the answer is like sort of, because she mainly buffs normal attacking characters, and Itto's main source of damage is his charge attacks, so it's not the best synergy, but if you really have no other option, you can use her, although the main character will typically be the more recommendable option. With that said, for your last slot in a triple Geo team, it's very flexible. Oftentimes people can run a healer. Someone like Bennett can give you a ton of damage, and it's just an amazing option in any team, so you can run a team that looks like this, or someone like Diona for a shield, or pretty much just anyone. Now with that said, you might not need a healer as the last slot, especially if you run a shielder like Zhongli, or if your Goro has Constellations, because at C4 he does give you a bit of healing. While it's not the most healing, it can be enough, especially in places like the Abyss, where even if you end it with low HP, once it's over, it's over. Also, while we're talking about Goro's Constellations, I do want to point out that at C6 Goro becomes even better. Like, it's a huge power spike for him that will increase the crit damage of your Geo damage based on the buff that you use. So when you're running a triple Geo team, Goro with C6 becomes insanely powerful, although even at C0 he's a great support for Itto. Other options for your last slot include someone like Fischl, or really any burst support that can give you good off-field damage, with Fischl being one of my favorites. Regarding Anemo characters like Kazuha, a lot of their passives are wasted with a Geo character like Itto because you can't swirl Geo, so you can't really buff your Geo damage through like the Verdescent set, but they can be used for grouping enemies if that is something that you need for certain Abyss floors. Now you can also run a 4 Geo comp, which is another team comp that works quite well, as you just are generating a ton of energy and dealing a bunch of Geo damage that your Zhongli will buff through his shield and your Goro will buff with his elemental skill as well. Another option you can go is just running double Geo with another double of another element like double Pyro, and this is viable, so you can run it, although typically I do recommend going triple Geo if you do have the characters to do so. With that said, I'm now going to do a DPS showcase of my Itto with probably his most common or recommendable team, where I'm running a triple Geo team with Bennett as a support, and it's just going to be me clearing floor 12. If you want to know what my Itto's on, he is currently on the Redhorn Stone Thresher, which is his signature weapon, with a 4-piece husk and a pretty good ratio of 72 to 62. Now I know I need more crit rate to balance this ratio, but I only have a good crit damage circlet. My crit rate one sucked, so I'm just using this for now. I also have enough energy recharge, and my Itto is in fact Constellation 0 if you are wondering. With that said, I really hope this guide was helpful, and I hope you'll enjoy the showcase. Let's go.
Let's roll! of this. Let's roll.
So yeah, that about sums it up. Itto is one of my favorite DPS characters in the game right now. Very fun, a lot of versatility in his combos and playstyle, and so I like him quite a lot. I do want to apologize on the slight delay of this guide. I know the banner's already out, and my cookie guide should be out tomorrow if you're wondering about that. And I will try to get future guides out much earlier, so I hope I can follow up on that promise. With that said, I really hope you guys enjoyed. If this helps you out, a like and a sub would mean a lot, so feel free to do that. And as always, I hope it helped, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.
Let's roll.
Wait, Ushi's just tanking it.
Ushi's just vibing. Ushi jam.
Wait, that's so funny.